What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Aggravated Chaos Podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Chaos. This week's episode, we are diving deep into a topic that resonates with literally so many of us, and not just in our industry, but across all walks of life, and that is burnout. I also feel like this time of year is a time where like you're either really feeling that burnout from like end of the year stress and holidays and whatever, or you're really motivated. Like you cannot convince me there's any other type of person who's just like sailing through life right now. So to start, I would like to paint a picture for you, one that perhaps many of you have seen or experienced firsthand. So imagine standing for hours, doing the same repetition of foiling over and over again, or spending hours applying bleach roots to ends to a head of hair that could technically belong to 3 different people. Now imagine finishing and realizing that you have a whole other service of applying Vivids that you need to do. This application is going to involve placement, formulas, and a lot of creativity. Imagine the smell of ammonia as it stings your nostrils and you hear the sound of your stomach growling because you're literally starving. So you pick up your 3rd iced caramel macchiato of the day and you take a sip and you hope that it will satisfy it for now. All of your appointments are back to back, leaving little time for a break, let alone a lunch. And before you know it, exhaustion sets in. You have physically and mentally hit a wall, but there are still 3 more clients on the books for the day. Sound familiar? Sure does for me. That was me for many, many years. And at one point, the movements and the pain, I became so numb to it that I felt like a machine. There was a day that I stood for literally 14 hours. And by the end of it, I remember hitting a wall in the middle of that day and being like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And then I had to like continue to like hustle through. And I did. And I became so numb to the feeling. There have also been days where I've hit that wall and I couldn't stop because I was like dead in the middle of like a correction or some big service. And I just wanted to cry because all I wanted to do was go home. But this is the type of behavior that can lead to burnout, exhausting yourself to the point of starvation and pain, unable to do, let alone enjoy anything after you get home. It leaves no time and no mental or physical energy to live your actual life. You know, the one that you're supposed to have outside of doing hair. But this is also the behavior that has been instilled in us since we entered into cosmetology school. The whole, if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. Or you have to scarf down your lunch in 3 minutes because there's a client that decided to show up early and you just can't make them wait. Or the salon owner says you can't make them wait. And that's if you have time to eat it all. I remember I used to work at a salon and I was so terrified of being caught sitting down that I would rewash towels so I could sit and fold them. And I constantly was making busy work for myself. The lead stylist at the salon was so booked that if I saw a lunch on her schedule, I remember being shocked. And because lunches were not something that were just automatically scheduled into the day. It was just if you have time or like you go and you eat like whenever you can. These are all things that lead to burnout and we know it. But what does burnout actually look like if you've never gone through it? So being able to identify these signs can sometimes mean the difference between stopping in your tracks, like to recharge or, whatever, and pushing yourself into a downward spiral, which nobody wants. So let's go over some signs of identifying what burnout looks like. So first and foremost, pay attention to your physical symptoms. These can include chronic fatigue, sleep disturbances, and even physical ailments such as headaches or back pain. Mentally, you might find it challenging to concentrate, experiencing heightened levels of anxiety and depression. The passion and creativity that was once a driving force are likely to have dwindled down, leaving you feeling very, very uninspired. And I know for myself, when my burnout was at its worst, I would have anxiety so bad on these days that are like on the days that I had clients and I would wake up, which waking up is already hard for me, but like I would wake up and know I had to go to work that day, that in the mornings I would be horribly depressed. And this had kind of started to seep into the night before, where, you're getting ready to go to bed, or like you're winding down the night and you're thinking about what is ahead, like what you have going on the next day and what's on the agenda. And so I would know that I had a client, and it would I slept with this like subconscious feeling that I was already dreading the next day. And those nights I would be so I don't know, it just kind of started to seep into it, and I would DoorDash and I wouldn't cook, and I would treat my body poorly. And of course, there's also the emotional aspect, a general feeling of detachment and loss of enjoyment in your work, accompanied by irritability and a sense of isolation. So I know that we've all been there, and trust me when I say it's a lonely place to be. I found myself getting annoyed at the fact that I had clients. Imagine wanting to have clients, wanting to make money, like you like to do hair, you get excited when you get an inquiry, and then being annoyed at the fact that they actually booked in and that you actually had clients. I blamed it on PMS a lot, and I was like, and then just kind of moved on from it, because some days really were better than other days. But looking back now, I realized that was the wrong thing to do, and it wasn't PMS, it was burnout. So recognizing these signs is merely the first step in any sort of proactive approach to reclaiming your life and the career that you admire so much. So let's pivot and focus on the key factors that can help bring yourself out of burnout. So we're going to navigate through this shit. Firstly, it is very important to carve out time for yourself. Prioritize your self-care, be it a simple thing like enjoying a quiet cup of coffee in the morning, or going for a walk, or indulging in a hobby, anything that relaxes and rejuvenates you. Sometimes finding solace in small moments can be powerful. It's like a powerful antidote to burnout. When you're doing these things, put your phone on Do Not Disturb and stay off social media. Don't worry about your clients. Don't think about hair. Don't run through your Cosmoprof list in your head like, I got to go get this and I need this. Focus on you and right now. Easier said than done, I know, especially in a world where everything feels like it needs to be documented for socials, or you feel like it needs to be done right now. I get it. And the next thing is going to be, don't hesitate to seek professional help if necessary. So sometimes talking about your experiences and feelings with a counselor, it can provide new perspectives, and they're there to help you and give you coping mechanisms, things that you can do. But as we all know, any type of healthcare is wildly expensive. So try journaling. Journaling is a great way to get your thoughts and feelings out. You can do it old school in a notebook. You can do it on your computer, whatever works best for you. I have found some amazing journal prompts on Pinterest. And if you go over there and you search, you can find some things that might actually really help you. And thirdly, I would consider networking and finding a community of like-minded professionals. Again, easier said than done. So sharing experiences and solutions can be not only therapeutic, but it can also pave the way for innovative ideas to prevent burnout in the future. And not even just that, but just knowing that somebody else feels the same way that you feel or is going through the same thing that you're going through can be really helpful in alleviating some of that subconscious, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? Whatever. If you have close hair friends in your area, start a book club or schedule a night out for drinks and client bitching. Form a calming circle. I don't know. Go to the gym together. Something that you can do that is just for you. And if you don't have anyone in your area, this can be a bit hard, because this is where isolation kind of starts to set in, which I totally understand, because all my hair friends are scattered across the globe, really. And it can make you feel like no one around you understands, especially if all of your friends in your immediate area are non-hair friends. They literally don't get it. If you're especially if they're not on social media, you're like, my post didn't do well, or someone said something mean in a comment. They don't get it. They don't understand. And they don't put the effort and the creativity and the love that we put into our work. They don't understand that. Especially those girlies that work for corporate, whatever. It's hard to talk to them about things that they don't get. Maybe you met somebody online though. Maybe you have a hair friend online. Schedule some Zoom calls once a week to share with each other, to just chat or whatever. Oh, you're too busy? No, you will find the time. That's part of why you're burnt out, is because you're too busy. Find the time for yourself. And then the big question that remains is, how do we restructure our lives to prevent falling back into the clutches of burnout? Restructuring your life is going to be one thing that's going to help you, prevent burnout. And it's all about setting boundaries, learning to say no when necessary. It's not only about protecting your time, but it's also about safeguarding your mental and emotional well-being. For a lot of us, saying no can be really hard. For the most part, many of us are people pleasers, or we feel like turning away clients is bad business. Whenever you have a hard time saying no, think about how your body and mind feel or felt when you were burnt out. I want you to fixate on that feeling and remember that the more that you say no, the less you will have that feeling. Now, I'm not saying turn away every fucking client and quit your job. No one is saying that. But let's say somebody reaches out to you and they want like a black 2 silver ombre, or they just want a honey balayage, and you're sick to death of doing honey balayages, okay? Like, you're over it. But you're looking at this person and you're like, well, I do need clients. I am still trying to build my books and I need money, so I should take her on. Tell her no. Tell her no. Refer her out. Or, and this is only in the case of being burnt out. Like, I'm not saying make bad business decisions all the time. Or tell her yes, and book her like however far or between services that are not honey balayages, so that you don't have to do that same service back to back. But also, if you have a feeling of dread of putting someone like that on your books, tell them no. Unfortunately, for you non-confrontational peeps out there, a lot of what setting boundaries is sticking to them. Unfortunately, for you non-confrontational peeps out there, a lot of what setting boundaries and sticking to them is deflecting, gaslighting, and shaming. It's standing up for yourself in a way that puts you first, and you'll come to learn that a lot of clients don't like that. So like, if you tell someone, so this is like a great example. I had a lady reach out to me and she was like, this was like right around school starting. And she was like, oh, I wanted to get my daughter in to get her hair done. And I have a very strict policy where I don't do anyone's hair that is under the age of 18. I do not do children. I do not like children. And so I don't like helicopter parents either, which is why, like 15 to 18, I'm cool with, but if I get a bad vibe from the parent and I feel like they're going to want to be over my shoulder all the time or whatever, sorry. That's why I say 18. But she had messaged me and she was like, oh, I want to get my daughter in before school. I had promised her she could get these like colored highlights or whatever. And I was like, okay, how old is your daughter? And she was like 13 or 12, or she was some young age. And she might not have even been in her teens yet. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I said, I don't take anybody who's under the age of 18. And she said, well, I was told that you were the best of the best. There has to be some way that we can work this out, right? That is a perfect example of someone, I don't want to say she was gaslighting or whatever, but that's a good example of like where you're going to have to stand your ground and say no. So I literally just didn't respond to her. So you don't necessarily have to be like, oh no, you could just not respond to them, which is what I did, because I already told you no once. I don't have to tell you no a second time. Sorry, bye. But like I said, you're going to learn that a lot of clients don't like that. Like that lady didn't like that I told her no. So be prepared to lose some clients when you start setting boundaries and actually sticking with them. But when you do stick with them and you do lose those clients, just remember that that person didn't give a shit about you. They didn't give a shit about your health. They didn't care about how you were feeling. They only cared about what they could get from you and when they could get it, as long as it was on their schedule. So if you feel bad about losing a client for putting yourself first, then fuck them. And I know clients are not supposed to be friends. Like, this is a business. Like, I'm sure there's some people watching or listening to this that would fully disagree with that, and that's fine. But there has been this shift in the hair industry where we are not taking clients that we don't vibe with, basically. If we feel anxious about having them on our books, or we see their name and we get a sense of dread, they're going. Like, they have to go. There's quite a few hairdressers that have not caught on to that yet, but they're getting there, and I'm proud of us for it. Another thing is that it might be time to rethink your business model or your work routine. Could you possibly implement a more flexible schedule? Would you be happier working less days but longer hours, or working more days and less hours? Maybe the projects you're taking on are too much and you need an assistant. Maybe you need more root retouches and less color corrections. I'm a firm believer that the types of services that you take on can dictate how you feel at the end of the day. And I'm not just talking about your body, I'm talking about mentally too. Having an assistant can definitely help with these things, right? It can be the difference between you getting a break and getting to eat lunch and not getting to eat lunch and not getting a break. So if you're thinking to yourself, I can't afford an assistant, first, I hear you 100%. Secondly, maybe look into the option of only having them a couple of days a week and schedule your long and more exhausting appointments on those days. So if you have like a full color and extension appointment and you know you're going to be making a lot of money on that day, but you also know it's a long appointment where you're going to have multiple steps and you want to make sure you're eating, book the assistant for that day. Like maybe you only do it on Saturdays or something like that. One of the things that would burn me out so bad was the content side of things. As much as I sit here and talk about how much I love content, like the content really would burn me out. And I've had a lot of you DM me a lot last year talking about how content burns you out and you feel like you can't keep up and whatever. Some of these color services, they take 5 to 9 hours. And by the end of that, we are flat worn out and we are on an empty creative battery. But we want the content. We need the content. But the thought of styling and taking pictures and setting up lighting is exhausting. So what I try to do as often as I can is set up content days. And I talk about this in my Habits of a Creator guide. And I talk about this in Plan the Gram. So I like to capture straight and styled hair. Okay. And at the end of the appointment, like the color appointment that's like really long, I'll just give them a regular blowout, which is usually, some sort of like straight style. And I'll take a couple of photos of just the blowout. I also think certain movements on certain length hair, it looks better on straight hair. So I'll do that. Then if it is a situation where I am really exhausted and I need to set up lighting, I might wait till the content day. But if I have the option to just take them outside and snap some quick photos, I'll do that. But then I'll have them come back for a complimentary style and photo sesh. So this gives both of us a time to rest and be refreshed. And they're going to come in and I'm going to wash their hair. I'm going to style their hair and I'm going to have all my lighting set up. I'm not going to be as exhausted and I'm going to be able to try out a new pose. I'm going to be able to change the lighting as necessary to kind of get the vibe that I'm going for. Like you just mentally will be more present in that moment and you're able to be creative with your secondary art form, which is photography or video or whatever you're doing. So here's something that I also hold dear. Never stop learning and evolving, right? So sometimes burnout stems from monotony. So why not explore new courses to reignite that spark and passion for your craft? With the development of subscriptions on Instagram, that's a great place to start and learn from some stylists that inspire you the most. I know I've been wanting to get better at styling for photos, like more kind of like editorial styling. And one of the things that I learned when I used to work with wedding photographers is the bigger the hair in person, like if it looks stupid in person, it's going to look great on camera. And one of the people that I think that is so good at this, especially with like that kind of textured, cloudy, fluffy, soft styling is, I think her name is Belle Pipsqueakin. She's in Australia. She is insanely talented. And so she just started a subscription service and I was thinking about signing up for that. I was also thinking about kind of wanting to modernize my education on foiling techniques and patterns. And, because it's something, foiling bores the shit out of me. And like I said at the beginning of this episode, it is very repetitious. And so I want to find a way to learn something new that is going to excite me to foil. Do you know what I mean? So learning new skills might help with the burnout if it's not like a physical type of thing. Another thing that I think is helpful to curb burnout is to live a life outside of hair. Part of this is, holding to the boundaries that we talked about. But the other part is something that I've seen trending on TikTok. And it's the art of noticing. As a society, we are enamored with our phones, shows and social media and movies and text messages and emails. Take some time to notice the things around you. Even if you want to make a TikTok of it, even if you want to take a video of it, you're still doing something that doesn't involve hair, and you're still noticing the world around you. And when you're taking videos, content of hair and then content of your life is a totally different type of content. You edit it differently, you view it differently, you caption it differently. It's just different. And so I think doing the art of noticing, if you wanted to make like a little video out of it, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that it's not related to hair, and that's the good thing. That's the entire point. So just start noticing the world around you. And I also think when you do this, you notice how a sign is framed, or you notice how a flower is drooping, or just random shit, honestly. One of my things about the art of noticing is when I look through my camera lens, I see things differently. I see things in a way that I don't see them when I'm just looking at something. So one of my stories about the art of noticing is I had a model who we would work together, and she was really good at the movement shots and whatever. So when you're doing movement shots, you have to find a movement that looks good on camera, that that you can photograph consistently every single time and that you like. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see what I'm talking about. But have you ever had a piece of hair in your face, but your hands weren't free? So you just kind of shake your head and to get that piece of hair out of your face? Well, I happened to be looking through my viewfinder on my camera, and she did that. And I was like, that's the move. I now call that move the Chloe, because her name was Chloe. But I was like, that's the move. It's soft, it's gentle, it's small, but it makes an impact in the image. And so I wouldn't have noticed that if I was just looking at her. If I was just looking at her, I'd be like, oh, she has hair on her face. Do you know what I mean? So that's the art of noticing. And it can be applied to literally anything. The other thing that I have kind of noticed about myself is that I like to consume content more than I created a lot of the times. And I mean, that's how it feels anyway, but it's so effortless to just sit and scroll. But making content, as we know, it can be exhausting, and it takes a lot more energy than it does to just sit and doom scroll. But I really do love it. So I've been trying to make myself create more. And like I said, make those videos that are not hair related. I've been making outfit videos. I've made videos of me and my boyfriend making nachos in the fucking kitchen, going to the grocery store. What jeans do I wear as a millennial? That video did really well on Instagram. And so I've just been making things about me that I enjoy creating. And you will be surprised to know that there is an audience that cares about you as a person and what you're doing in your life. And there is an audience that cares about your hair. And then there's the audience that cares about both. So, and I wanted to add a quick side note to that too, is that I've noticed about myself that I'm actually less creative when I spend more time on social media. I find myself looking to social media for inspiration instead of creating something for myself or with my own brain. And I feel like that could be a whole entire episode on its own. If you want that, let me know. But it's just another reason to kind of cut back on the consuming part. Allow yourself to consume, because it is a way to inspire you. But just go out and notice things that don't have to do with hair. Because I think when you consume social media, a lot of the people that hairdressers follow are other hairdressers or hair brand companies or whatever. So just go out into, basically, as Gen Z would say, go touch some fucking grass. Do you know what I'm saying? Touch some fucking grass. So I did a poll on the podcast Instagram page, and I wanted you guys to submit your questions for this episode, and we would do a little advice portion, right? And if you guys like this format, please let me know, and I will try to incorporate it more. But you guys absolutely nailed it with the questions. These are so good. So let's get into those. The first question asks, the best ways not to sabotage yourself when you're in burnout mode. This is so good. So let's first address what self-sabotage would even look like during burnout. And I did Google some stuff, so some of these might sound really robot-y. But Self-sabotage during burnout can manifest in various ways. While burnout itself is characterized by emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion, particularly due to prolonged stress or overwork, the self-sabotaging behaviors can exacerbate or prolong the burnout. Basically, instead of like adjusting to take some time, you just keep doing what you're doing. But the number one thing is, it says ignoring the signs. So despite feeling the clear signs of burnout, you might actually push through and just continue doing what you're doing, thinking that you can handle it or that it'll go away on its own. But that actually only deepens your exhaustion of what you're already feeling. And this is just going to create a cycle of burnout that will literally never end. And I think hustle culture has a lot to do with why we feel like we can, quote, handle it, or why we might feel weak for feeling burnt out, which leads me to the next thing about self-sabotage, and that is setting unrealistic expectations. So despite feeling burnt out, you might continue to set the same high standards for yourself. Ding, ding, ding. That's me for sure. Leading to a cycle of overwork and further burnout. You're literally setting yourself up for failure by doing this. The next one is neglecting self-care, which I'm also super guilty of. This might look like neglecting physical health, like not exercising and eating poorly. That would be me. Mental health, not seeking help when needed, or even basic necessities like adequate sleep. Might sound really weird, and I also heard that this was an ADHD thing, but mine is not brushing my teeth. And I know that sounds absolutely disgusting, but it is what it is. When I get to like that exhaustion point, it's painful to like literally do anything, even just exist. Like I can hear my hair growing and I can hear myself existing, and I'm like, I'm so tired. And when I say that too, I don't mean like I want to die or unalive myself or anything. I want to sleep. Like sleep is so much easier than doing anything else. In my mind, it is because my mind is turned off, and I can't beat myself up mentally for not being productive if I'm asleep. Which leads me to the next one, which is excessive self-criticism. So you might blame yourself excessively for your feelings of exhaustion and inadequacy, leading to decreased self-worth. I'm really guilty of this. And I notice when I get this way, I need to rest, drink water, or go for a walk, something that's good for me, touch grass. So recognizing these behaviors is crucial. Once you notice that you're doing any of these things, you can correct it. And what's ironic is that the list of what self-sabotage looks like for burnout is actually burnout symptoms, because I was going to read what burnout symptoms are, and that entire list is also burnout symptoms. And I heard someone say once that whatever your love language is, the opposite of that is how you self-harm on like an emotional level. So my love language is gifts. One of my like top love languages is gifts. And when I want to feel better, I go shopping and I buy myself it's like dopamine shopping basically, but I buy myself things. And a lot of times I spend money that I don't need to be spending or that I shouldn't be spending, or that I can't afford to be spending, which stresses me out later on about my finances. So, but in the moment, it feels like self-care. My other one is words of affirmation, and I degrade myself with a self-deprecating humor a lot when I'm feeling burnt out or, when I'm just down. So the next question is, I'm trying to build a clientele and still feel burnt out, especially when I'm slow. Advice. So I feel this so hard, like the combination of investing significant effort with potentially slow initial returns, it can exacerbate feelings of burnout, even if you're not, quote, busy in the traditional sense. But also burnout doesn't have to 100% be the result of your job. It can be your overall daily life. Like, do you have kids, or parents that depend on you? Like, those can be contributing factors. But since I don't really know a lot about this person's personal life, I'll give you advice solely based off salon life. So the first thing that I would recommend would be to celebrate small wins. Every client you gain, every positive feedback you receive, or any progress that you make is worth celebrating. Recognizing these moments can help you maintain your motivation. So like your wins that you celebrate doesn't have to be, oh, I hit 100,000 followers or I made $100,000. It can be, I booked a new client. It can be, I remembered to take before and after pictures. Like your wins can be whatever you want them to be. And to me, I don't really think there's any small or big wins. Personally, a win is a win. And I think oftentimes we look at too large of a picture or too far ahead, and that keeps us from celebrating those wins. The next one would be to limit comparisons. Like I know it's natural to look at other stylists online and kind of like gauge your progress based off of them. But everybody's journey is unique and everybody's journey is different. Everybody starts in different places and, you know, social media is just a highlight reel. So comparing yourself to others can really lead you to unwarranted stress that you might not even realize that you have. Trying to build a clientele can be stressful, especially financially. So to feel burnt out, I think is normal. And like I said, it might not even be from doing hair. It might be from trying to build. And you're doing this like it's the repetition that we talked about. Like you're doing the same repeated thing over and over again. Like you're booking every day that you have openings. You're posting on Facebook and you're doing all these things and you're maybe not seeing the results that you want to see from it. And that can be frustrating and exhausting. But recognizing that, celebrating your wins, setting a timer to do some client recon could go a long way. So I don't know if you listened to the episode that I did with Sammy Hair Magic, but she was talking about people in her local area online, right? Like going on Facebook groups and all of that. What you could do is set a timer to do those things. Like when the timer goes off, move into something else that brings you joy. So you set a timer for 30 minutes, you do your client recon on Facebook. When that timer goes off, you're done. Go make yourself a snack or go for a walk or play with your dog or something, you know, something that brings you joy. The next question is, I feel like all I have are bread and butter clients and I am still burnt out. I feel almost guilty for being burnt out because it's all easy stuff. Any advice? I get it. So feeling burnt out doesn't always correlate with the complexity of the task that you're doing. Repetitive tasks, I feel like this is a pattern. You see where I'm going with this? Repetitive tasks, even if they're remotely simple or bread and butter tasks, can lead to those feelings of monotony and stagnation and ultimately burnout. Nobody wants to live in Groundhog's Day and repeat the same shit over and over again for the rest of their life. And if it feels like that's what you're doing, there's two options. You're burnt out from doing those things or you're just fucking bored. And it can, you know, like, again, burnout varies. Maybe it's not the repetition. Maybe it's emotional and environmental causes and not just your physical workload. Because if your physical workload is easy and you feel guilty from, quote, being burnt out from it, maybe look at the bigger picture. Maybe it's not the work itself. Maybe it's your environment. Maybe it's emotional distress that you've been going through. And don't guilt yourself for feeling burnt out either. Your feelings are valid. Regardless of the perceived difficulty of the tasks, everybody's tolerance and experience differs. So take a look at your bigger picture, see if maybe there's something going on there, but also reconnect with your why. I feel like that's really important. Remind yourself why you chose this line of work and reconnect with your original motivation or passion, because that can help you kind of like navigate out of it a little bit. You might find out that you don't have that passion anymore, and that's totally okay. I feel like I've lost my passion for doing hair, and I lost it quite a while ago, and I kind of keep going. And it's weird because before I go and do hair or before I go have clients, I have like that dreaded feeling and like I don't want to go there, I don't want to be there. But then when I'm in it, I enjoy it. So it's a very weird place to find yourself. And I hear from a lot of stylists that When they first enter the industry, they love it and they're passionate, but the more that it becomes an obligation, the less passion that they have. And I know I can resonate with that because you start doing something because it's fun and you like it and you're passionate about it and you can be creative, and then it becomes an obligation and you have all of these people depending on you and it gets stressful and then you don't like it anymore. So that makes sense. I would also reevaluate your client relationships. So if there is a certain client that contributes disproportionately to your feelings of burnout, it might be time to consider if those relationships are even worth maintaining in their current form. Sometimes clients wear on us in ways that like we don't notice or that we make excuses for, like, oh, that's just Susan. She's always got some depressing stuff going on. They have the tendency to trauma dump on us or unload, and that can be exhausting. I would also set boundaries with yourself, not just with your clients. Like we talk a lot about setting boundaries with clients, but we don't talk a lot about setting boundaries with ourselves. So making sure that we have a clear line between work time and personal time, making sure that you're recognizing how you're feeling so that you don't overextend yourself on either side, because that leads to burnout. And lastly, challenge yourself. So this sounds probably really weird. You're like, if you're burnt out, you probably need rest. Hear me out. If you're burnt out from working too much, then don't do this. Like if you know it's because you work too much and you need to just take a rest, don't do this. But if you're burnt out from the repetitive nature of what you're doing, this could be helpful. If you feel that your current tasks are not stimulating you, they're not scratching your brain, and you feel like you're just on autopilot, consider seeking out opportunities to learn new skills or take on different types of projects. You could buy a wig, try something new, try a new color placement, try a new color formula, try a new color line, something like that. You could get into bridal styling, learn how to be better at updos if that's not something that you normally do. You could take an extension class. Start learning something that does like kind of spark that passion again. And like I said earlier, like I want to fix the monotony that I have with highlighting. Like my relationship with foiling sucks right now and I want to fix it. So I want to find a way that I become passionate about it again. So that's what I mean by like challenge yourself. So the next question is how to tell the difference from a few bad client days versus full burnout. Like when to fire a client versus change your business model. So the first thing I want to say about this is checklist. Personally, I fucking love a checklist. And this is what a checklist would look like for me. So I would make a note and it would say bad client days. And I would put all of these things as like check boxes. Incident specific. So the issues seemed tied to particular incidences or short-term situations. Client specific. Only one or a few clients are causing the stress or challenges. Can you identify where your feelings started? Was it, when one of those clients came in or before? Identifiable triggers. You can pinpoint the exact reasons for the challenges: negative client, argumentative client, chronically unhappy client, etc. Emotional recovery. After addressing the issue or at the end of the service, you feel a sense of relief and return to your usual mood. That usually is a huge sign right there. No prolonged dread. So you don't dread interacting with most of your clients or working on most projects, but you have a few that you do feel that dread with. So full on burnout, consistent exhaustion, generalized issues, which is like challenges or negative feelings persist across different clients and projects, loss of passion, avoidance, like you're constantly procrastinating, delaying work, or, dreading clients' interaction. Cynicism, a growing sense of detachment, negativity, or bitterness towards your work or clients. That's me. That's like one of my biggest ones. Reduced performance. So you noticeably decrease in the quality of your work and there's an increased difficulty in focusing. For me, this looks like rushing through a service. Like I cannot fucking wait to be done with it. There's passive dread, which is like constant sense of dread and anxiety about work. Physical symptoms. So this is a big one for full on burnout is, like we mentioned earlier in the episode, the sleep disturbances, the headaches, other physical signs of prolonged stress, And not everybody gets a physical symptom either. So just keep that in mind. And then the last one is declining satisfaction. So like no matter how much you achieve or how hard you work, it is never enough and it does not bring satisfaction. So these are checklists that you can use to gauge like where you are on the spectrum. So if you find yourself ticking off more boxes for the full-on burnout category, it might be time to take a step back and evaluate how to bring more balance and just, overall well-being into your life. And that might include a change to your business model. So if most of your checks are in the bad client days category, consider strategies to improve client relationships or get rid of those clients. Like you guys all know the saying, when you close one door, another one opens. So when you get rid of a client that causes you stress or whatever, that just leaves space for a client that's going to treat you well to come into your business. And honestly, no business model is perfect. I think this is something that we can all always be working on, make small changes or adjust to make our business work best for us. And maybe implementing these checklists might be a part of that. So the next question is how to become re-inspired after burnout. So recovering and finding inspiration after burnout is a journey that involves a combination of self-reflection, self-care, and intentional changes. Just to be clear, burnout can last for years, especially like really bad cases of it. And everyone's different, meaning that everyone has like different things that inspire them. So when I was looking into this, one of the things that I read was seeking new experiences, like try something new, whether it's a hobby, traveling to a new place, learning a new skill. New experiences can provide fresh perspectives and ideas. And this kind of goes back to like challenging yourself to learning something new or getting out of the monotony of doing the quote bread and butter clients and taking on like a model, which I think I'm about to talk about. So a new experience for myself was that I taught myself photography. And you guys hear me talk about this a lot, but it applies to so many things. I got inspired in a different creative medium. So not that just it was something that I could apply to content creation and hair, which is initially why I wanted to learn it. And I didn't realize when I started teaching myself that I was burnt out, which is probably why I got really, really into it. It did reignite my passion again. It was short-lived. And again, the reason for that is that I didn't allow myself enough time to rest and take a break. Like I started learning this thinking I was learning it for hair. For me, I didn't realize I was burnt out from hair. So if you got into something like photography and you realized you were burnt out from hair and you started learning photography and instead of immediately applying it to like hair and clients, you applied it to nature and animals, that's different. What I did was wrong on so many levels because I dove into taking models and I dove into like having people come in and wear wigs and whatever, and it was all hair related. So allowing your body and mind to have rest, to have the rest that they need to fully recover is important. This one is more of a statement than it is a question, but it says, I started having terrible anxiety about having to be, quote, on all day. I stopped enjoying time with my regulars. I was so bored. I fully feel this. With ADHD, we call this masking, which I feel like a lot of people do this, but I feel like we've seen a big shift in the hair industry of hairdressers being like, I'm not taking clients that I don't like, and I'm not taking clients that I don't, quote, vibe with. Now, saying you're not taking a client that you don't vibe with does not sound like sound business advice. However, in doing that, you're keeping yourself from having to mask at work. And when you're spending 2 to 12 hours with these people, you need to like them and they need to like you. You guys need to get along. So I understand that. And I think that is a very good thing to just be pointed out. So there are about 1, 2, 3, 4. There's probably 4 more questions in that people have sent in for this. What I'm going to do is I started a broadcast channel for the podcast specifically. However, the Instagram gods have not given the podcast Instagram page the ability to have a broadcast channel. So I made a second broadcast channel on my Crystal Chaos page. It's called Aggravated Crew. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post these 4 questions over there. Like I'm going to spread them out, but I'm going to post these 4 questions in that broadcast channel. And I'm going to let you guys give each other advice, because some of these I honestly don't know how to deal with. Some of them are situations that I personally have never been in. And so I think it will be really good for you guys to be able to see what multiple different people are saying and then kind of like do some deductive reasoning. While broadcast channels are not like a group chat, like you guys can't chat with each other, there is a question box that I'll put up for you. And so you'll be able to see each other's answers. So before I wrap up, I want to leave you with this. Burnout is not a sign of weakness. Boomers and every other generation before that, and even some millennials would tell you that it is, but it's not. It's a sign that you're human, and that you have given your all and that you're tired. And now it's time to reflect, put some of that love and work and care toward yourself. Burnout can also lead to actual breakdowns and possibly injury. So please make sure that you're taking care of yourself. If you need to go see a doctor, if you need professional help, please make sure that you're getting it. As we reach the end of this, I want to challenge you to take a moment to reflect. Like at the end of this, if you're riding in your car, turn the radio off when this is over. Obviously listen to the ending music because it's killer, but turn the radio off after this and reflect. If you're at home or if you're on a walk, don't start anything else and think about these questions. Have you seen the signs of burnout in yourself? If so, remember that it's not a dead end. It's an opportunity to rebuild. Okay. It's a way to look at your past and change your future. It is a way to look at how you've been doing things and realize that, okay, maybe that's not working, and change what you're going to do in the coming days so that it does work better for you. It's a chance to create a life and a career that is sustainable, that is fulfilling, and that is joyful. I think a lot of the hustle culture around the hair industry, especially online, can have people ruining their bodies and not creating a sustainable career for themselves. And this is the perfect time to implement change. While social media is great and there's a lot of good advice out there, only you know what works best for you. And I think right now, the beginning of the year is a great time to implement some changes. So that is all I have for you on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, if you have any stories, topics, comments, suggestions, the email is in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. And that is all I have for you. I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.